everybody, and welcome to a new Dota 2 video. We're going to be doing something a little bit differently today. We're going to be going over the TI10 qualifiers and the qualified teams and my opinions on who I think is going to make it to the biggest esports event of the year. Obviously, because of COVID, TI10 was pushed back a little bit, but I'm very excited that it'll be happening this year in the Timberg Center in Sweden in August. So let's jump on in, and I'm going to give my full opinions. And please, if you guys have any other opinions on what's going to happen, please post it in the comment section down below. It helps push my video into further eyes. So let's jump on into the video. So obviously, as you can see here, these are the 12 teams that have qualified for the international so far. We got Evil Geniuses from North America. We have PSG LGD from China, Virtus Pro from Eastern Europe. We have Quincy Crew as well from North America, Invictus from China, T1 from Southeast Asia, Vici Gaming from China, Team Secret from Western Europe, Team Aster from China as well. From Western Europe, we have Alliance, and the two South American representatives so far, Beast Coast and Thunder Predator. So I feel like this is kind of the most interesting stack of teams that we've seen in the past TIs. As the last major showed, the ANA major, any of these teams can win. Any of these teams can show that they are at the top of the peak of the mountain currently. T1, obviously, they showed up really, really well at the ANA major alongside with Evil Geniuses and PSG, who obviously took that major. But overall, I think all these teams have the opportunity to showcase that they're a strong contender for to get the Aegis. If anything, I'd say Beast Coast and Thunder Predator are obviously teams that aren't as predicted to do well just because they are South America, and South America has never won an Aegis before, as well as Team Aster, who's kind of been on a downslope after the ANA major, not showing up too well in that lower bracket run. But overall, I think all these teams are really, really fun to see. I mean, last couple years, we've seen one or two teams that jump in that we think might be a little bit more boring play style, and or they just aren't really as enjoyable to watch the games that they play in. But I think these teams are really, really fun. So the other 6, to make a total of 18 teams, will have one qualified team from each region, which will be North America, South America, Western Europe, Eastern Europe, China, and Southeast Asia. So in terms of the North American qualifier, I'm going to give my opinions. So we have Undying Zoomers, Simply 2-Based, Sad Boys, Black and Yellow, Hustlers, Arkosh Gaming, The Cut, Team Dogchamp, Felt, Electronic Boys, and 5-Man Midas. So overall, I think this one is kind of an easy one to predict. Undying and 4 Zoomers are by far the two best teams in this entire fucking 12-team qualifier. I don't really see any other team doing too much. Maybe Simply 2-Base could pull off a little bit of an upset. But if you look at the brackets here, Undying and 4 Zoomers kind of have a pretty free bracket, unless obviously 4 Zoomers and Simply 2-Base show up in the upper bracket round 2. But I'm going to say that Undying gets this. Obviously, you can see they had the biggest DPC points in North America. And I don't think anybody else can really show up too well. 4 Zoomers, obviously, the other team that I said. But I'm going to say Undying and 4 Zoomers in the North American qualifier final. And I'm going to have Undying winning. I believe it's a best out of 5. Yes, it is a best out of 5. So I'm going to say they're going to win 3-1. All right, so jumping into the South American qualifier, we have a little bit different of how they run their qualifiers. So you have 14 teams here. And obviously you have teams that are already starting in the lower bracket round 1 based off of their points as well. I feel like this is also a pretty easy one to kind of go over. No Ping Esports, who obviously just competed at the ANA Major, which ended about a week ago. They showed up. They did really, really well for a South American team that they don't really have anybody that kind of backs them up. They did really, really strong. Really, really strongly for one of their, I guess, first live events that they've competed in, as far as I know. They took EG to game 3. They couldn't really go further in the lower bracket run, but I don't think people even had them getting out as far as they did. So good for them. I think they're pretty much the team that's going to take this. All the other teams that are in here, as you can see by the very big differential in points for No Ping and SG Sports. So I'm going to say No Ping wins. I think they also have a pretty big run to the finals. The last team they would play would be SG, and the only team I think that could pull up an upset would be SG, but I'm going to go with No Ping. They're going to win the finals 3-1 as well. Now jumping on into the Western Europe qualifier, which is probably the most exciting one, I would say. Again, you have the 14 teams. You can kind of see here that there are some very big name teams that have not qualified for TI, and Western Europe obviously being the most stacked, I think, of all the regions, maybe besides China. Nigma, Liquid, Tundra, and OG. Those are probably the 4 teams that we're hoping that they might get an easy spot in. Nigma, I think, is obviously the team that you could see qualifying fairly easily, but I'm going to go on a little bit of a different page here. And no, I'm not picking OG. I actually don't think OG is that good. Obviously, Sumail, he is the one that's going to be covering in for Anna or Humble God. He is not competing under OG anymore. I don't see OG going very far, to be honest with you. I think Team Liquid actually is going to get the spot. Nigma, I think, plays a really, really unique style of play, but I think they can get abused very easily. And I think that's one thing that Team Liquid is going to do. Obviously, the majority of these teams are going to be boot camping to qualify. And this is probably one of the tougher TI qualifiers to date. I think the last year that OG won, they had an also very, very strong qualifying round. But I'm going to say Team Liquid takes it. The other thing that I want to mention is Liquid would only meet Nigma in the upper bracket final. So I do think that Liquid might lose this, go in through the loser bracket, go to the grand finals, and win. I'm going to say 3-2 as a prediction, but I don't really see any other teams pulling up upsets. If anything, it's these 4 teams. Viking GG obviously was in the lower division, going from the upper down to the lower and back to the upper after TI, but I really don't see any of these teams doing too much. A lot of these teams are kind of lower division teams that are just there based on the fact of how they played throughout the regional events. So I'm gonna say that Team Liquid is gonna take the Western Europe qualifier. Jumping into Eastern Europe. Eastern Europe is probably the one that's the weirdest, I would say. But based on the region that I have the least experience watching and understanding, I'm going to probably go with Team Spirit here. They also were played at the last Animajor, and they did okay. The only other team I could say that might do well is AS Monaco Gambit, who has, I'd say, a pretty strong team. They were also at the last Animajor, and they competed pretty well. I just don't see any of these other teams really putting up too much of a fight. If anything, I would say these 5 and Extremum are the only teams that might do consistent throughout the tournament. Based on matchups, though, I honestly think any of these teams can go any way. Any of these upper bracket round 1 games could go any way. And based off the teams that win the upper bracket round 1, those are one of those, like, whatever these 4 teams are that go to round 2, they're going to win the entire thing. But my prediction is I'm going to have Team Spirit versus AS Monaco. No, I'm going to go Team Spirit versus Nodus, Vincer, Navi, and I'm going to have a 3-0 for Team Spirit in the Eastern Europe qualifier. For China, so China has a little bit less teams. They have 10 total. We see here some teams that a lot of people might not know of. I think a lot of these teams are like old TI teams that just haven't had the potential of getting into that upper class. Teams such as CDEC, Astra Aries, Sparking Arrow, eHome even, or Royal Never Give Up. A lot of these teams, I think, could do some damage, but to be honest with you, I think Elephant, it does sound weird that I'm always going with the team with the highest DPC points, but Elephant seems like a very, very strong contender in this region, just solely off the fact that a lot of these other teams are not very strong. I would say, if anything, it's these 2 teams because to be honest with you, I don't really see any of the other teams too much. I don't really watch lower division China, as it's in a different time zone, being from Canada myself. So I'm going to say Elephant is going to meet up with either eHome or Sparking Arrow Gaming. Sparking Arrow Gaming has, as I've been kind of watching a little bit more of the China region, they've been kind of on the uprise, and people have them as kind of like an underdog. So I'm going to put Elephant and Sparking Arrow, and I'm going to put that as a 3-2 as well, which might come to some, backhanded remarks. But I think the China region is kind of weak, besides those top-tier teams that I've mentioned that already qualified. So I got Elephant beating Sparking Arrow Gaming 3-2 in the grand finals for the qualifier. So Southeast Asia, I think, is honestly the most exciting qualifier because of the fact that there are so many good teams. There are so many good teams that, unfortunately as it is, Southeast Asia didn't have enough teams to qualify. As you can see, TNC Predator just barely not making, as well as OB Esports, X Neon, and Fnatic. But honestly, I don't really see any of these other teams doing much. Any of these 10 teams doing very much. But these 5 teams, this is going to be a bloodbath. I think this is probably the hardest. I'm actually going to retain what I said earlier. I actually think the Southeast Asian one is harder than the Western. Because of the fact that I think there's teams just based off their name, OG, there are people thinking that they're very good. I personally don't think that they're the greatest team currently, but I think TNC, OB Esports, Fnatic, Execration, and even Boom are stronger than the other teams in the Western combined. I think Nigma would still topple any of these teams, but if you're going solely off of the Southeast Asian region as a whole, these are like your powerhouse teams, and I think they're just way better than the Western. If anything, I would say TNC. I'd say probably TNC and maybe Execration. I think Execration comes from the Animajor, and I think they just show up. I think they just do really well. In my opinion, I don't really have that much understanding of Fnatic. I mean, they have Raven and DJ and Jabs, and even Chuan, who are like great players. OB Esports, I don't know. I think they've got a lot of these DPC points from the beginning of the year, so I don't think they do all too well. But I still have to go with TNC. I mean, I think TNC is just too good for this division. I know people in the comments are going to be like, oh, you picked all the number 1 DPC points teams? Yeah, but I think TNC is just too good. I got TNC, and I actually have Execration. I think Execration makes a lower bracket run. I have TNC Predator versus Execration. And I have TNC Predator winning 3-1 in the Southeast Asia Grand Finals to qualify for TI10. Alright, so to conclude this video, the group stage being August 5th to August 8th, and the main event being August 10th to August 15th, in a little over 2 months' time. And to be honest, I'm going to just say it right now. I think this TI10 is going to be the most competitive TI we've seen in a very long time. Obviously, as many of us know, the last couple TIs had teams that kind of just wean off the other competition really, really easily. And I think this year is going to be a little bit different. I think we're going to be seeing a lot of, 2-1s or very, very close-knit 2-0s in terms of the group stage portion and going into the main bracket. And I don't necessarily see one specific team running away with it. Obviously, you could see teams like Evil Geniuses, PSG, that are kind of the front runners as of right now, I would say. But as we've seen before, a lot of the front runners don't really do well when it comes to TI. So we're going to have to see what happens with that. I would say South America is technically the weakest team, but I still do think that they could do some pretty big damage when it comes again to the group stage and main bracket. But yeah, I'm very excited for this TI10. I hope you guys are as well. Thank you guys again for watching this video. Make sure to like and comment down below your opinions on everything that I brought up in today's video. I will be uploading a full video on my TI10 predictions with all the teams that qualify eventually. So make sure you stay tuned for that. And thank you guys again for watching. Make sure to subscribe again if you haven't already. And have a good night. Peace out.